Hello, we are here with a VOD review. Um, Thank you to Disco for submitting this. And yeah, let's get into it. So they're playing Narset version, and they have told us they're up against Titan, but game
I
one
will
you
try to
don't
comment
have
over.
that. So game one on the play, this hand's a keep. Counterspell works pretty well as a removal spell. You have double cantrip, so you're in a pretty good spot against most decks. It's not like a turn 1 Ragavan, which has the highest upside, but just a solid, consistent hand. And hopefully you can resolve Narset turn 3 on a pretty clear board, which is kind of the ideal goal here. Very punishing against a lot of decks and will let you get maximum value.
For this match, yeah.
So
This
right
first
away
game
they
is
show
pretty
us they're
much
on Amulet.
just I just get stomped by Amulet Titan first.
So they say this first game they get stomped by Amulet Titan. But yeah, we see Amulet and in Urza Saga. And whenever I see Urza Saga against Amulet, you can kind of think of it like a ticking time bomb for when the turn they're going to try to go off, because when it hits Chapter 3, they're going to get an Amulet and probably try to combo that turn. So the turns before that are the turns you should be developing your board. So this turn right here was our best chance to do that. One thing I might have thought about is, well, I guess it doesn't matter this turn, but maybe using the fetch land, because then we are closer to Delirium. Also keeps the Scries from Preordain at the bottom of the deck for future turns, which is very marginal but can have a small impact.
First game, so I don't really have any gameplay here.
Oh man, they just have turn 2 Titan with triple Amulet. Wow. Yeah, I would not play around this, because like when are you going to develop your Titan if that happens? And if you hold up Counterspell, they're not going to take as aggressive of a line losing to Counterspell with Summoner's Pact, so they would just wait a turn probably. Maybe even 2 turns. Like, we need to have pressure on them or they won't go.
Game 2 is a bit more interesting, so I'll look at that now.
Okay. So game 2, I like this hand. I think it's a keep. One thing I would definitely be thinking about is I want to get Delirium fast, ideally. So I would probably play the DRC turn 1 and then be ready to use these counters pretty aggressively going forward. Like, I might just be, and they mulligan to 5 also, so every resource you take away is worth it. I guess on a mull to 5, you might be
Now that I know that they're on Titan,
less
I decided to keep
afraid
this
of a
hand because I can
Dryad
lead
because
on
they're
with
going to
Dragon
have
Trade
less
Channeler and have
lands, but
subtlety up if they try to run over me with the early Titan. And the counter spells will give me coverage over the late game as well.
so yeah, I like that we got done the DRC.
I decided to bolt and step here to try to shape my draws because I think it's more useful since I haven't played the Grace earlier. So I think it's more
I
useful
agree.
to just deal damage and get a Surveil and get Delirium up.
Looking for Delirium seems very valuable here, so I agree. And then I like jamming this Narset too.
I decided to keep the Narset from the bolt and bottom the Dragonfly Chandler when I get the Surveil from the Narset. This is due to I think it's better to do that, but you could also argue that putting the Narset in the graveyard would give me Delirium faster, and having 2 Dragonfly Chandlers would win me the game, but I think it's better to have Narset because they will probably have a ring, considering that they kept the hand
Hey,
after mulliganing to 5.
sorry, my cat just jumped on my keyboard. Silly guy, Bones. Little bone crusher giant.
Here I subtlety the Dryad to make sure they can't ramp out into the ring next turn. Or it's also or Kevin of Souls in the Titan.
So we
I also
subtlety
don't have any
Dryad
Kevin of Souls,
here.
so I let this resolve. It might
It's
stay around for
pretty
quite a while.
aggressive to do this, but we do have the active Narset, which is going to help
They
us get
decided
back
top the Dryad,
some of
and
those
now I'm going to
cards.
counter spell it in the next turn.
If the Dryad hits play currently, we don't have any pressure. So
Now I swing with the Dragonfish, and I decide to keep counter spell because I know they're gonna play the Dryad next turn. But I'm still intending to play the Bolt the turn after that or in the future to get Delirium and try to get the clock on.
and I like this also, paying attention to the clock and also how much mana we have. Bolt is pretty tempting. So that
I
preordain gives
top
us
the
delirium,
Preordain to make sure I
right?
get Delirium for sure next
Well,
turn.
if you bottom,
And
if
I
you
still
bin
need to get more
preordain,
counter
you still
spells
get
and a faster clock
delirium.
because they have a repeating fountain.
But the key thing is the preordain is very easy to cast next turn because we know that we're just going to be holding up counterspell most likely. So we know that we have that extra mana to use on the preordain.
I could see the argument for keeping the Ragavan there, or maybe even the Force of Negations, but I think that
I
most
would have
need
kept the
iterations
Ragavan because
and
it's
counterspells
lethal.
that.
Next turn, like think about your clock, right? You hit them to 10, and then you hit them, you
That's
counter
actually counter the
this,
One Ring,
and then you
but you could
dash
argue for letting
Ragavan
it
and bolt them.
surveil
That's
here,
lethal.
or letting it go through because I have Narset, but I still think it's worth countering it due to them only having 5 mana available, and I still have a clock even if they get the Titan. And I'm still digging towards those counterspells and iterations.
So normally, yes, I agree. You don't need to, like, looking for interaction is probably better. But when you can take a whole oh, and look at that, you top deck Ragavan. Well, that's
Here I have
lethal.
some technical difficulties while recording, so
Nice, yeah. So you get
I
the
decided to dash Ragavan instead of playing him
oh,
because they're probably going to have either
I
a
can't count. I'm
Dryad or a
sorry. They played
Titan
the
or
they
some sort
played
of blocker next
the
turn.
Radiant Fountain, which we
So
knew about,
I think that's worth
and
it,
it
but you
wasn't
could
lethal
still
then.
play it
My
as
mistake.
normal. So I'm not
Then
sure if I should have
I
dashed it there,
would
but
think it's correct to put Ragavan into the graveyard then. If it doesn't take a turn off the clock, then I don't think it's worth it.
here they play a Titan and they get the Bajuka Bug and a new fountain, and I'm quite stumped there on what to do. See later here this turn. I decided to bolt my own Narset. And I'm still not sure if this is correct, whether or not I should just bolt at them. But I'm thinking here I need to get Delirium.
Bolt your own Narset
And
is
if
a
I can dig towards
pretty
a
heads up
sorcery, I'm probably
play.
going to either hit a land or a creature off this bolt of the Deliriums, of the Dragonfire Channelers. So then I'm going to have Delirium to win.
That's a very heads up play.
And you see me bottoming the Unholy Heat here. I'm
But
pretty sure in retrospect
but
that I would have kept it on top.
the problem is,
Like,
hold on a second. So bolting Narset is a cool play, but the problem here is if you had just dashed, if you dash Ragavan, they block Ragavan, take 4. Hmm. I could see taking. Yeah, bolting Narset is very interesting. You kind of do want the scries before your draw step, so you don't just draw a brick in your draw step. I guess the question is, like, would you bin a counter spell? You probably could lay out all the cards in your deck and just think about, okay, well, how many of these cards am I gonna keep? How many give me Delirium? Versus taking the draw step and not committing the bolt, because it's possible the bolt could still be valuable to just burn them out. It kind of depends. Like, yeah, it does seem like you might really need Delirium though, because they probably can do something like attack with Titan and then replay Radiant Fountain and probably get another Radiant Fountain and just start gaining a ton of life. So ultimately, I think that you are correct to do that.
make sure I can get more triggers for the Dragonfire Channelers.
And you have a lot of redraws after that, like Bauble would give you so many looks, and Artifact type, Preordain would be huge. So I think that you're pretty favored.
Here I
If you
get
bolt
quite
there,
lucky
you
and
get
top
3
deck on
looks.
Expressive Iteration, but it was only a matter of time when I would have gotten some sort of spell. But it could of course have been another instant or sorcery, but pretty much anything here except another Ragavan or Dragatrade Chandler would be good enough because I'm missing everything except creature there. So,
Well, you already have instant in the yard, and instant wouldn't have worked.
and with that iteration, I win the game in game
Nice.
3.
Yeah, the Bolt Narset was a pretty cool play,
Here I decided to keep
and
this hand.
definitely
I
seems
don't
better
have
than bolting
any threats,
them.
so to speak. So it's going to be an uphill battle for me. But I'm thinking that I can shape my draws with Mishra's Bubbles and fetch land, and also
Yeah,
clear
I
them.
think I would definitely keep this
But
hand.
of course, if they have a really fast hand, I'm just going to die here.
They can have a fast hand, but you can't play around a turn 2 kill from Amulet, and I think this hand has a pretty good chance of finding a counterspell turn 3. And yeah, drawing DRC is also pretty good. So we bobble
in retrospect, I would
them.
probably have kept the preordain on top and saved or sandbagged a Mishra's Bubble, but I think it's fine either
No, I
way.
agree with binning
But that might be
preordain
something
because
you want to comment on.
we actually could play a turn 2 Murktide Regent here, right? If we had binned all the cards and cracked all the baubles and then fetched,
At this point, I'm pretty sure
we
they
could
don't
play
have
the Murktide on turn
any
2. That
a
seems
lot
pretty good
any
if we don't
counterspells.
find
So I'm
counterspell.
thinking
We
this
did draw
counterspell is going to be
counterspell,
live throughout the
so
entire game.
drawing the counterspell changes things because now
And even
we
if they
can do
do,
that.
I of course have Blood Moon for the future. So
Our plan is basically disrupt as much as we can before playing the Blood Moon, but also apply maximum pressure.
No, here I get an island.
So if
And
we could,
I of course want to get the Blood Moon down, but they
if we
already
could
have a forest.
Murktide
They
before
have
we Blood Moon,
played
it's really
already.
good because they probably have to
So
spend at least a turn answering the Blood
it's
Moon,
not really a. I
and then
don't
we're
know what I
attacking
would have
them
done.
for
I'm
a
really
lot.
unsure when it happened, and I'm still unsure. But not to play the preordain and just pass with counterspell up.
We don't even necessarily want to use the counter spell on their 3-drop here. Well, now that we drew another one, I think we do. I would definitely not preordain here.
Should have kept this.
But if I do,
it's not really a live draw here. But
I think I would have passed with counter spell. Hey, hey.
I tried to counter
Sorry
this
about that.
Arbor Grazer,
Cat's
and
going
I
silly.
agree that I should have probably saved it if they were to play a Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Yeah,
But
I don't
I
see
think
a lot of
countering the
value
Grazer is more important
in...
because they don't have an amulet, and therefore they will try to develop towards 6 mana to cast the Titans naturally. So I still think
that's tough.
Especially because.
So this game got kind of interesting because I really would have identified that we could play turn 2 Murktide and played towards that. Like a turn 2 5/5 Murktide into Blood Moon turn 3 is so good. But when we didn't take that path, then turn 2 we were in an awkward spot where there's a question: do we want to hold up Counterspell or Stern Scolding, or I'm sorry, or Preordain? But if we Preordain, it's not very likely we'll be able to do anything else for that turn. We already had the land, the third land rolled up, so we weren't really preordaining for anything in particular at that point. And we had 2 counterspells in hand, so I kind of leaned towards holding up counterspell. Like they could have played the One Ring here, and it would have just been really, really bad for us, right? I'm not sure how Amulet sideboards always. I guess checking Dom Harvey's guide would be a smart place to start to figure that out. But just like it didn't see a lot of value in casting the Preordain here. And I think I would have held up Counterspell and probably used it somewhat aggressively. But yeah, I think that going back to that turn 1, we had a chance to apply more pressure by going aggressive, bin everything with the baubles, and then go for a turn 2 Murktide, and that would have been my top choice for a play to make. But yeah.
Because I can get value from this.
Oh man, this cat has a lot of energy right now, guys.
Here I decided to just slam the Blood Moon, and I don't. I think this
So
is
now we
correct,
have
but
no
now they have the
threat. They're
opportunity if they
missing
play a
land
land to just
drops, right?
play the one thing which they
Or
do,
no, they're
and
are they
that's of
missing
course
land
going to
drops? No.
impact my ability to play the game in the future. But I have the Otawara to bounce it, if that will
So
be an
you
opportunity.
slam the Blood Moon, right? And what does this really do? They have 4 mana here. Slamming the Blood Moon isn't actually stopping them from doing anything next turn. Like next turn they would have had 5 mana. If they went Amulet plus Bounce Land plus Titan as like their last 3 cards, or they're gonna draw one, so they could draw the missing piece, but it's pretty unlikely they put Titan into play next turn. To me, this is a great opportunity to get Murktide down first, and not only that, but then next turn we get to play Otawara Blood Moon, and if they have the Boseiju, we get an extra land to have Counterspell up. So then we have Counterspell up. Murktide's in play. It would be a 6/6. Attack them for 6, and we have Counterspell, and then the next turn we have 2 Counterspells up. Then the only thing we're really losing to this game is basically we're losing to Cavern of Souls, which is I think a 1 of these days in Amulet, maybe a 2 of. So it's not something that I would really be too afraid of, and it's also not something we can do a ton of. But that's even if they have the Boseiju, right? Like if they don't have the Boseiju, then we're okay here. So yeah, that's kind of where my head would be at. But I think that what it comes back to is against Amulet, pressure, 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 right? Like this Blood Moon wasn't actually addressing anything. And if they have One Ring, right, then they can just make a land drop and play the One Ring. So you're not really unlocking any or like locking them out of that either.
For me. They don't have any place there, but they still have the One Ring possible. They're still able to play the One Ring.
So I assume this turn we're gonna play the Murktide, and you can see it's exactly the same effect, but we
And
just missed
because they
six
didn't play
points
the
of
One Ring last turn,
damage.
I decided to play Murktide Regent, hoping they still don't have it. But you will see that they do have it now.
And I think they drew the One Ring, right? Like they would have played it the turn before. We were tapped out of
I don't know if
mana,
they top decked it
so
or if
they
they just
definitely top
stand
decked
like
it.
this,
And if
but
we had,
I'm still in trouble here because they're gonna draw themselves into a Boseiju soon. I decided to Odawara here, and I'm assuming that they have Force of Vigor or Terra Sunder in hand to get rid of my Blood Moon.
the other options, if we played the Murktide as a 6/6 and they did
So here I'm
nothing, we
just trying
could
to
just
prepare
start holding
just in
two
case they don't
counter
draw Blood
spells
Moon,
up
but
and
I
not
still
play the
decide to
Blood
keep up
Moon
counter
right
spells
away.
in case they don't have any Blood Moon removal
We
there,
could wait till we hit another land or something.
which they
So
don't have. And they decided to play Dryad here, and I'm considering counter spelling it, but I decided not to do that because they
yeah, so
could have another
Dryad
ring, but instead they transmute for Otawara.
Dryad is interesting because it does let them transmute Teleria West. It's a very niche thing. I'm not even sure I would have thought of that in the moment. Because, like, we see they already have 2 forests, so we're not really that afraid of them, like, hard casting a Titan or something like that. The Dryad doesn't unlock that possibility for them, but the Dryad does unlock Transmute Teleria West, which might be reason enough to counterspell it. The problem is we know they have One Ring in hand, so it's that accounts for one of our counter spells here. But yeah, the Transmute Teleria West, that's pretty sneaky of them. Not something that I would have always thought of. I mean, maybe I would have, but yeah, I think that in that spot, counterspelling is pretty reasonable. We have also we have this Ragavan now, which is invalidated. So, like, if we counter the Dryad, we can dash Ragavan next turn, hitting them for 8, and then we can hit them, counterspell their One Ring, and then hit them for 8 again, putting them to 1 life. And then we have 2 lethal threats. So yeah, I think this was a miscalculation here. You have to think about your clock. You have to think about everything that gets unlocked by by the
Which was quite a surprise for me because
Dryad.
I would assume that they
The
would
Teleria
transmute
West is
for
hard to
Boseiju
see
here.
though, giving them blue blue there.
But the Otawara is going to make it more difficult, and I'm thinking that the Blood Moon is long gone here. but instead actually decide to bounce the Murktide region to hand, which still surprises me. And they
I
played
think that
the
makes a
Ring
lot of
Head,
sense
which
to
I of
bounce
course
the
have encountered
Murktide.
before, and I can't
They're
really
trying to buy
explain it.
themselves more time, and also we are constrained on blue mana. So, but them attacking is definitely a mistake. Now we can dash Ragavan, which is pretty nice.
And I play Ragavan, but I still don't know what they have in hand,
And
so
we
I just decide to
Preordain.
keep a counter.
Preordain's a little bit suspect because maybe, well, I guess it's okay. It just means that there's a decent chance we might have to use the treasure. Now, we did find the last island in our deck, so we got pretty lucky in that regard. But, and we found another counterspell, so kind of the dream scenario here with this Preordain. But maybe if we had just passed with counterspell up. I guess also Preordain puts more spells in the air for Murktide. So it's pretty close if we should Preordain or not, but I could see it.
Spell here. And pretty much for the rest of the game, we're going to keep a counter spell. And they're of course not going to attack with Dryad now that they know that I have a Ragavan.
So they play the One Ring, and we counterspell, but they could have Titan. No, they don't.
Playing a Murktide and one top deck and counter spell.
Yeah, I
They
think
just
we
get
have
killed.
to. I think we do have to do that to the One Ring there because
I'm
now if
going
they
to play
were,
enough
they
time
literally
that
could have been
counterspell
at
is
3 less life if we had played the Murktide a turn earlier, and they would have been dead to Lightning Bolt here. So I don't know if we win this game, but I do know we would have won this game if we'd played the Murktide the turn earlier. It looks like we're gonna win anyways.
I decided to play the Dragon Church, and I don't know if this is important because I was playing if they might have another Otawara or something, or maybe an Endurance. Because I don't know what to do here, if I should just make sure I win or just play more loose. But I decided to play the Dragon Church anyway.
All
That's
right,
the game. So
so that's it. Thank you for submitting this VOD review. I think that the important thing there was aggression against Amulet and thinking about what they threatened the next turn. Like when you played that Blood Moon, I thought that was pretty critical and could have cost you, but you did get the win anyways. So I guess that's what matters. Thanks for submitting, and patrons, make sure to submit your own VOD reviews so that we can do match reviews. And my apologies for Bones. He's a very energetic cat. All right, see you guys.